One evening, my mother had a phone call from a friend of hers asking her whether they had been yet to fetch me. And mother said, fetch Iby? Why should they fetch Iby? Well, evidently they had been to fetch her daughters. They were evidently rounding up young Jewish girls to be, there's really no easy way around it, to be prostitutes for the German soldiers on the Eastern Front. None of those survived, so it is one of the very well-kept secrets which can't be proved or disproved because nobody survived those. So we were at that time visited by one of my mother's cousins who refused to wear a yellow star, and there were quite a lot of people who refused to do so. So I dressed up in a headscarf like a peasant girl with a little case, and my cousin and I took the tram out to the village where my grandparents lived, and I was hidden by my grandparents for a few days until my mother could make arrangements for me to get away to safety. After about 3 days, my cousin came from me and we cycled to a village about an hour away, which was the village from where our cooks and maids always came. So we had a connection with them. And I went to stay with a family there, the wife who had been one of our cooks at one of the dispatches. And I was introduced as being her niece. And that was giving a reason for my being there. And after about a week, arrangements had been made that her husband was going to take me across the border. So we cycled part of the way and we then walked. It was February 1942 and everything was frozen and cold, and then crawled across no man's land into Hungary to the nearest village, the station, and then took the train from there to Budapest, and John took me to my aunt, my father's sister, in Budapest. When my aunt naturally didn't know I was coming and was not very pleased about seeing me at all, because by this time, although there was no active persecution of Jewish people in Hungary, harboring illegal immigrants was a punishable offense, and she personally didn't want to expose herself to that. She was all for sending me back, but I mean, John just said he had no arrangements to take me back. As far as he was concerned, he had delivered me and he turned around and he went. Auntie Bella just enforced that she couldn't have me there, and she just didn't know what to do, and John had gone and was in an almighty flap about it. And Martin said, he says, well, she can come and stay with me. I've had girls staying overnight before. Now nobody's going to worry about that. So I went and stayed with Martin. I never quite found out what he actually did for a living. He had a big car with which he drove around, but I never quite found out what he was doing. I found out later, except that he was involved in the underground movement, because when he was advised that he was going to be called up for labor service, which was the equivalent of army service, he said that he would have to make some arrangement for me to go somewhere else to live, because if he went into labor service, his flat would be locked up. There was no way in which I could stay living there on my own, because nobody had to know that I was actually there. So we met up in a restaurant with Dr. Markey and his wife, and after some talk and investigation, Dr. Markey said yes, he was going to take me on. Those were his words. And I went to live with them. And officially, I was a companion to his wife, who was deaf and dumb. But she was fluent in sign language in English, so we communicated with, I learned signing, and we communicated actually in English Sign Language, which nobody else could understand. And while I was there, I was used to, one of my tasks was to go to certain hotels for tea dance, and people used to come up to dance with me and then to report to Dr. Markey, who I had danced with, and that's how we came up against somebody who worked at the Italian embassy, and I was told to encourage that person because that person could get visas for the people that we were helping to escape pilots who had been shot down over Germany or Austria, and this was really an escape route of getting them out of there through Yugoslavia and Greece, where they were picked up again by the British or American forces. About a week after this particular occasion, I was just going down the stairs when two men came along and they said, "Did I know where Dr. Markey lives?" I said, "Yes, it's on the first floor. Can I take them there?" I says, "Well, it's just on the first floor. All right, rather, can you show us?" Not thinking anything about it, just thinking they were perhaps stupid. I went with them, rang the bell, and the maid opened the door and says, "Oh, Miss Iby, did you forget your key?" I said, "No." The two men pushed me in and said, "No, they wanted to see Dr. Markey." And they were from probably what we equivalent is the secret police. And they took Dr. Markey and me to the police station, and we weren't the only ones. We subsequently found out that over 400 people actually got arrested at the same time who were involved in this particular escape movement. And because some very high-ups were involved, eventually it was decided that they were not going to be prosecutors. In the meantime, I had spent a very uncomfortable fortnight in the police being investigated, and 3 months in the prison, where, well, every week you were taken to the magistrate to be interrogated. And it was June 1942 when they told me that they weren't going to prosecute me. And as I went out of the gates of the prison, I was arrested for illegal entry as an illegal immigrant.